There's a long-standing tradition in the church of reading the 7 last words of Jesus on Good Friday, and it's kind of a profound experience to hear all of them read and sometimes hear a reflection offered on them. But this year we thought that what we would do would be do a simple meditation on one of the words each Friday throughout the season of Lent and post them online so that you can share them with others and enrich your journey. But certainly know that we're praying for all of you on your Lenten journey, whether you're engaged in an intentional discipline of reading the Bible this series for the next 6 weeks, or doing a devotional, or maybe perhaps participating in our Lenten photo challenge. Whatever you're doing, know that we're rooting for you and praying for you. Let me just begin by reading the first word, which comes from Luke chapter 23. 2 others also, who were criminals, were led away to be put to death with him. When they came to the place that is called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing." One of the most profound movies I ever saw was a movie called The Mission, which starred Jeremy Irons and Robert De Niro. And the movie begins with a tribe of sorts. We're not sure where they're from at the very beginning of the movie, but you see a lot of people with very little clothing on, painted faces, and bows and arrows they were all carrying. And they are surrounding this silent man who says nothing, who doesn't seem to move much, and you realize they've attached this man to a cross. And nothing is said, but they push this man on the cross slowly into the river, and you see the river picking up speed as he goes down and down and down the river, until you realize quickly it's headed to a waterfall, and you see this vast scene of him going hundreds and hundreds of feet down to his death. We learn quickly this is a man who was a missionary trying to reach out to a South American native tribe and share the gospel with them, and obviously they had flat out rejected him. So Jeremy Irons, who you'll see in this picture, plays the next missionary. His name is Father Gabriel, and he is heading quickly back to that same exact place where the man was executed. And so what you see in this picture is him climbing up on the edge of the waterfall in a very, very dangerous, tough way to get to the top. But it takes an intense effort to get there, but he makes it up to the very, very top in the middle of this jungle. And what he decides to do is that he's not going to creep up on these native tribes. Rather, what he does is when he gets to the very, very top, he pulls out of his knapsack a small oboe, sits on a rock, and begins playing this majestic, beautiful music. And maybe it's curiosity, or maybe they admired him for his courage. He draws in a vast audience of this native tribe, and they give him the time of day. Maybe they admired his courage, but certainly they loved his music. And they give him a chance. They begin to welcome him into the community, and he begins to share the gospel with him. But what we see as the days roll on is them accepting him, and them accepting him as a teacher of the gospel. Meanwhile, we quickly are introduced to Robert De Niro's character, a man named Rodrigo Mendoza, who is indeed a man of extreme violence. Mendoza spends his time harassing this native community, capturing any that he can and turning them into slaves for a massive profit. And as you would imagine, when someone is inflicting harm in your community, you will never, ever forget their face. Mendoza would be a face they feared, and a face burned in their memory, and certainly burned in the memory of Father Gabriel. And meanwhile, Rodrigo returns from a trip one time and finds his fiancée in bed with his brother, and subsequently he ends up killing his brother in an extreme rage. And in the eyes of the law of that day, which is several hundred years ago in that community, he was entirely justified in doing so. But Rodrigo falls into this cycle of depression and silence. He ends up sitting in a cell without eating and drinking for a long period of time. But meanwhile, Father Gabriel comes back to town to visit. And he learns of Rodrigo sitting in this sort of this prison. And he goes to visit him, and what he sees is this man of violence is now a man full of guilt, full of anger, but what he sees is a man who is stuck and unable to move forward in his life. So Gabriel, what he does, suggests a penance. He says, why don't you come back with me and the other Jesuits? Let us go back to the mission together, but what you should do is carry your brother's armor. And so we see this picture of him entering the river, heading toward that waterfall, carrying his brother's armor and his sword. And what he has to do is he starts climbing the cliff alongside the waterfall. And almost every step is difficult, but all the way you see him attached by this rope to this burden, to this armor. Each climb, each step is a little bit treacherous, even if you're not carrying heavy weight. But he keeps going, keeps persevering, keeps sweating every step of the way till he gets to the very top. And when they get to the top, Father Gabriel is there ahead of him, and the community of the native crowd there greets Gabriel with rejoicing and hugs and smiles. And then all of a sudden, Rodrigo appears over the very, very top, just makes it to the top, the face they would never forget. And he's on his hands and knees with this rope attached to him, the burden hanging over the edge of the cliff, and he is just stuck. He's worn down. He can't move any further. He's weak. And then what you see is this. One of the native guys runs over as quick as he can, sees this face he never will forget, knife in hand, and it's clear that he's going to kill him. And Rodrigo looks at Father Gabriel. He looks at the crowd there, and he likely sees all the pain and horror he's inflicted on this community. And then in one of the most beautiful scenes I've ever seen in any movie and in any story, what he does is rather than take a knife to his throat, he cuts the armor loose, cuts the rope, lets the armor fly over the waterfall. And he literally just laughs, and the native tribe laughs and laughs and laughs, and so does Father Gabriel. And what you see in this picture is Rodrigo breaking down in tears of joy. That's what you see in this picture is he's surrounded, he's hugged, he's embraced, and he's forgiven for the things that he's done in the past, and that heavy burden he's carrying is no longer with him. As we remember the first word, we remember the profound words of Jesus. You are forgiven. All that you've done, that heavy burden you've carried, the things that in the past have held you back, are cut loose like this rope of burden that Rodrigo had been carrying. People in our lives, perhaps you and I, we may all be carrying some sort of burden. In fact, we all do. And we all need to be forgiven and released. And like this man who's surrounded now by a community of joy, giving him a fresh start, that's what Jesus does to us on the cross. Gives us a fresh start with no burden holding us back. Amen.